All right. Thank you everyone for joining today. So this is our second installment of our webinar from the Coop. So my name is Chelsea. I'm from the Backyard Chicken Caucus, and with us today is Rai Mordente from Covid Cluckers. So just a little bit of info about Rai. Rai is a chicken math loving chaos coordinator of the Covid Cluckers, known to them as the Claw. She started her first flock in the spring of 2020 during the lockdown. As a music educator, she's passionate about teaching and using fact-based research in her social media posts. Education and chickens blended perfectly into her life. She lives with her 8 beautiful chooks, 3 cats, 2 dogs, a horse, and her husband, the Bearded Claw, in Maryland. And with that, I'd like to hand it over to Rai.
Hey, I just want to make sure everybody can hear me. So just a quick disclaimer, I am a teacher, a music teacher. I am not a veterinarian. Everything that we're going to be discussing today is going to be based on my experience, but I do know that everybody has a totally different situation. Everybody is coming from a unique perspective. So I'm going to just be making sure that you know things that I've learned through my experience and research. And I'm hoping that you're going to learn some new facts, some techniques, and learn what to do for your setup, and hopefully give you some resources in case like you ever get stuck. So just a couple things, because I am a teacher, I like to make sure that everybody knows like the Zoom norms and etiquettes, and this is where we're beginning. So if you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand, ask a question in the chat. Please be open-minded. Not everybody has the same situation as you. Some people do not have the financial means that you might have. So we're trying to make sure that we are meeting everybody where they are versus like where we think other people are at. So everybody has a unique setup, specific questions for your flock, and everybody's going to have a different perspective. So hopefully we can all learn from each other. So here are all of the topics that we're going to discuss today. And obviously, like if you have questions and you want to jump in and ask a question because you're like thinking of it in your brain, feel free. We're going to start like where to begin. I am a huge person about like having organizers and like knowing what steps to follow. We'll talk a little bit about brooder setup, heat, building relationships with chicks, because let's face it, we want them to love on us. Feed and treats, enrichment, my big soapbox, biosecurity. We'll go over some disease and common ailments. I'll show you some stuff from my first aid kit, basics that you should have at all times, and they're very inexpensive. And I'll give you some of my resources. And then if you guys want to have a Q&A at the end, we're there. So I don't know about you guys, when I go to the feed store, like the first thing I do, beeline straight for the chicks. And I really want to buy like all of them. They're so cute, but you got to stop. Don't let chicken math take over. We should never, ever purchase an animal on an impulse. Chicks and chickens need specific supplies to be able to survive. And sometimes it will take time to build these or find these items. Sometimes you might have some legal things like getting a poultry permit. And that sometimes takes some time because it can involve inspections, it can involve paperwork, and sometimes it's not as straightforward as you think it might be. And you need to have a plan in case you can't keep them. What happens if like your HOA is like, get out of here? What happens if you have a rooster and you're not allowed to have a rooster? So you need to come up with some sort of plan, and like having that in place beforehand is going to be what is the best possible thing for our animals. So I will share this. I have a whole pamphlet about this, but I have like an organizer. I'm one of these people. And I know that we have people who are not necessarily from Maryland joining us today, but you know, this is just a basic organizer that I like to have. And it really helped me when I was planning everything with my flock, having a permit, office number, and website, because like I'm in the city of Frederick, so I have to go through them in order to do things. Knowing my coop and run requirements and restrictions, just having that written out. So that way, like if you have an inspection process, it makes it streamlined is probably the best way to do it. I mean, like we filed for ours, we found out that our coop was too small based on the restrictions that we had here in the city. So we had to go back and rebuild our coop. So knowing the square foot per bird inside the coop, most places is between 2 and 4 square feet per bird. Square foot per bird in the run, 10 is like a minimum, and you might want to build it a lot bigger than what you think. maximum number of birds. Chicken math is a thing. I know that we like to fudge the numbers, but you got to be careful too, because like sometimes there are big fines in places. You can get in trouble. You can sometimes have your birds seized. So you want to make sure that like you're not skirting the law, so to speak. Are you allowed to have roosters? Yes or no? And that's good to know, because then if you're able to cite like, yes, I'm allowed to have roosters, back off, people can't complain as bad. Local veterinarians, not everybody has them. If you have an absolute emergency and like, say, for example, sadly, you have to put a chicken down, many veterinarians in the area will do that, but you need to call them ahead of time to make sure that it's okay with them just to bring your chicken in if like it's like a life and death situation. Your state veterinarians, we answer to the Maryland Department of Agriculture, and we do have a state veterinarian. I've talked with him before. He's very accessible. You can email him, you can call him on the phone. And I have the USDA veterinarians, because that's going to be very important with avian influenza that is going on. And please register your birds with the state of Maryland. They're going to send you information at all times if like something is going on that could affect the health of your birds. So, and I guess like the final thing, if you don't have a coop when you purchase your chicks, like as day-old chicks, you've got about 8 weeks. After 8 weeks, you don't want them in your house. They're just too big, they're too messy, and they're ready. So whatever coop you can build the biggest one that you're allowed, build the biggest run that you're allowed, because you're going to want that. It'll help you prepare for the future. So brooder setups, it's going to be whatever you can find. I've used this particular picture as like my med tent. The next time around that we get chicks, I will be using this for our chicks, for our brooder. Before that, we used a plastic dog kennel. Anything that's big, because they're going to go from these little teeny tiny chicks to like birds, like giant pullets, pretty quick. You'll be amazed at how fast 8 weeks goes by. The heat source, we're going to get into that controversial topic in a moment. You're going to want a feeder, a waterer, roosts, and bedding. So you want to make sure that it's appropriate for what you have room for in your house. So our brooder setup. A lot of times people think of wood shavings and they don't stop to think that there's a difference between pine and cedar. Cedar is toxic to chicks. I know that a lot of people use them for like their guinea pigs, for like chinchillas and things like that. And you can get it like at a local pet store, but you want to avoid that for chicks. I prefer pine shavings personally, because of that, but cedar is toxic. So just keep that in mind when you're going to purchase things, and make sure you don't make that mistake, because you don't want to have your chicks just die within a few days of getting them. It's very traumatic. Chickens are very dusty. The layer of dust that I had in my house, I really like underestimated. I've had some experience with some hemp bedding. I've heard great things about it, but you have to know your chickens. My one beautiful chicken, Rex, decided to eat a whole bunch of it, and it got stuck in her gizzard. And because it got stuck in her gizzard, it ended up being a very expensive bill. So I won't use hemp bedding again, because she was a bonehead, and it has nothing to do with hemp bedding. It just has to do with the fact that she is who she is. Yes, the coffee grounds. I've heard great things about them. I've used them in my actual coop, and I love the smell of them. I don't know how it would do with the humidity here this time of year, but I loved it for the winter. It smelled amazing, because I would mix it in with the PDZ. You want to make sure that when you're cleaning your brooder, you're going to have to clean it a lot, because chicks poop a lot. Everyone underestimates that. Like, it is so much poop. I've seen people put down newspaper at first, and if you can avoid that in any way, it's probably for the best, because a splay leg, it gets nasty. It's gross. It'll stain your birds, and you want to give them the best possible start you can. I've heard good things about sand. If you're okay with having sand in your house, you're just going to have to really vacuum it up. I know that a lot of people like using like the little play packs. So they take the sheets from like a crib and put it around, so that way the dust doesn't go all over the place and the bedding doesn't go all over the place. But honestly, like I prefer pine shavings. I found that those were very cheap and easy to clean. Outside of my coop, I have used the coffee grounds. I love them. It's fabulous. The smell, it's the best in the morning. So your heat, this is just like a nice little handy dandy chart. You're going to be starting off at about 100 degrees. Then the chicks will tell you if they are comfortable or not so comfortable. If they are staying underneath the light and they're seeming happy, they're not like, trying to get away from it, trying to get to those corners and hide, they're comfortable. If they're huddled underneath it in a big, like fluffy pile, they're too cold. I've had a lot of people ask me about their baby chicks when they first get them. It is so tempting to want to do like a cute little photo shoot, put them in little cars and like, have them pose in little teacups and things like that. Don't do it. Give them at least 2 weeks because they're not ready to get out of that situation with the heat. They don't have, because they have floof on them instead of feathers, they don't have a way to insulate themselves. So you want to make sure that you're following this basic chart. By week 8, they should be able to go outside because they should be fully feathered by then. Sometimes they don't. It depends on the growth of your chicks, and we'll talk about that too. But like you should start weaning them off of the heat around week 6. So, you shouldn't have to really worry too much about that. I mean, obviously, with the way the temperatures have been lately, if I had chicks outside right now, I would probably have a heater on at night just in case, because it has been dipping into the 40s and that is a little cold for them as babies. So yeah, and don't worry, I will make sure you guys get a copy of that heat chart. So let's be controversial because yeah, let's talk about heat. I know that a lot of people have very strong feelings about heat. It is something that people on some of these chat sites for chickens and like all these groups, they sit there and they really get into it, and it becomes like a literal heated argument between the heat lamp and the brooder plate. At the end of the day, you have to do what you can afford, what you're comfortable with. Don't let other people necessarily influence you. My chicks were raised on a heat lamp, but it was COVID and it was quarantine and I was home 24/7. I never left my house. So, I didn't have a problem with that. If I was to do chicks now, I would probably do the brooder plate just for the sheer fact I'm not in the house all the time. So heat lamps, the pros, they're inexpensive. The bulbs are inexpensive. It does the job. You can find them pretty easily. The big con, it can burn down your house. Birds will fly into it because they do get startled, and also they just like using their wings. It can be expensive to run because it does use a lot of electricity. It can cause pasty butt because it's very difficult to regulate the temperatures. So you got to really pay close attention to that. But again, I used one. I'm fine. My chickens are perfectly healthy. Oh yes, we'll get to that. So brooder plates. What happens is that the chick is able to put their little back underneath it. So that way it feels like a mother hen and they're able to get heat that way. But if they step out from underneath the brooder plate, they're not going to be in direct heat. So it will move with the chick's growth. So as it gets taller, you could actually move the plate up the legs. It allows the chicks to sleep without like any disruption from light, because with the pineal gland, they end up seeing light and they wake up instantly. So this helps them understand like, oh, it's now nighttime and I need to sleep. It does have consistent heat. Some can be turned into Coop heaters, and they are very inexpensive and energy efficient to run. The cons, they're expensive. Like the upfront cost is like very expensive for a quality one. I have some that I do not recommend because I bought them and they would die within a week. So, they're expensive. It's hard to replace them sometimes, and they're not always easy to find. What Melissa's talking about with the brooder plate with the top between the legs above the chick's head on that yellow piece, you can put like a piece of plastic there because the chicks are going to jump on top of it and they poop everywhere. So, and the smell of like hot poop, it's not a good smell. So if you can avoid that at any cost, I would. So putting something up there above the brooder plate to keep them from hopping on there is worth your time. So enough of the boring stuff. When do we get to the chicks? Because they're so cute. And that's my Princess Leia as a baby and grown up. I like to joke because I love puns, but if you want to be a chick magnet, we all want our chicks to jump on us. We want them to cuddle, and people will say chickens don't like to cuddle. That's false. They do. They just get used to it, and it has to be on their terms. So as a prey animal, if you come down and you're actually a claw picking up a chick, it's going to scare them because they feel like they're getting eaten by a predator, and it panics them, and you're going to hear all sorts of really sad noises. So if you're going to approach a chicken, approach it from the front so that way they can see you. I always would put my hand down in front, maybe a little bit of chick feed, so that way they could see. And I didn't move very fast with them. Fast movements make them think that you're a predator, and they don't really like that. Please, please, please wash your hands before and after handling chicks, because you can get sick and you can get them sick. It's just like dealing with children. You don't want to like pass your germs on to them. So when you allow them to come to you, it's magic. It really is, because they'll sit there and they'll cuddle. If you're gentle and slow with them and show them that pets are not a bad thing, they will love to sit on your lap, especially as babies, because you're nice and warm. You're going to want to sing to them, talk to them, let them get to know your voice. Don't be afraid to make sounds around them. I know a lot of people like to tiptoe around their houses, and you don't have to. You just want to make sure that they're understanding that like they are not going to get hurt in any possible way. Feed and treats. Buy the big bag. They come in like the real small 5-pound bags. Don't do it. Just buy the big bag. Feed right now is insanely expensive. Like it has gone up big time in price. So you're going to want to get the big bag of feed. You want to make sure that you have a feeder that isn't going to necessarily allow them to like dump their feed all over the place. I have seen, my favorite so far has been the type that you can screw on the top, like a little mason jar. A friend of mine showed me how to take a solo cup and stick it into the feeder, so that way it only allows the feed to come down a little bit at a time. The chicks can't just like dump it out all over the place. So you want to try and make sure that you keep the feed clean. You want to make sure that it's not wet, it's not moldy. Always inspect your feed before you give it to them. Layer feed should never be used until 18 weeks, and that is because of calcium. They can't process calcium for their eggshells until 18 weeks and above. That's when they're considered to be mature. If you have a hen that is hatching your chicks or taking care of your chicks, you should be using a flock raiser type feed and put some oyster shell off to the side. The chicks won't touch it. Believe it or not, chickens are smart enough to understand like, hey, maybe I shouldn't be messing with this. So the chicks won't mess with the calcium. They might like go over and peck at it a little bit, but they won't ingest it. But that's more for the laying hen. Medicated versus unmedicated. We'll get into some coccidiosis, but the medicated feed is there to prevent coccidiosis. It doesn't always, because coccidiosis is a virus that's found in poop. And what it does is it keeps your chicken from being able to absorb B vitamins. You can have your chicks vaccinated for coccidiosis. If you feed them the medicated feed and they've been vaccinated, it can undo the, oh my goodness, it can take out the vaccination status of your chick. So it basically negates it. It's like they never had it, and it can make them a little bit more vulnerable to it. But on the flip side, it's not a guarantee that your chick won't get coccidiosis. It's a virus, it's found in poop, and it's a very strong one. Unmedicated feed, you want to make sure that, again, you know what your vaccinations are for, but that's for chicks that have been vaccinated, and you know that for definite, and they can just eat that, and you don't have to worry about the vaccine working. If you have a hen with your chicks, do not give them medicated feed. It will poison them. It's not good for their system. They can handle small amounts of coccidiosis. They can fight it off, but we shouldn't be giving them medicated feed. And that's something to know, because I had a vet actually tell me to give that to my laying hens. Please don't ever, ever, ever give your fully grown hens all of that. Thoughts on giving Medicaid? To tell you the truth, with medicated feed, you know, either you're going to keep them on medicated feed the whole time or you're going to keep them on unmedicated. Like it's not one of those like mix and match kind of deals. If your chick gets coccidiosis, you're going to know because they're going to become very lethargic. Their poop isn't going to be, it will have a little bit of blood in it. It will be kind of runny. The big thing is the fact that instead of like the normal, like a chick is going to sleep and powering down, they actually just like stop. And I had that problem with one of my chicks, actually a couple of my chicks, they got infected with it and they were on the medicated feed and it didn't guarantee that they couldn't get it. And so I had to go in and treat with Corid. So giving them the medicated feed when you take them outside, that's not going to do much of anything. So I would just stick to one or the other, to be honest with you. Whatever you can afford, I guess, is probably the best. So let me move on. Treats. They're not going to be interested in treats like for a while. Even though they're little stomachs with legs, they're not into it. They might peck at it, but they're not going to ingest anything. If you do give them treats, it should be sparingly, like, because we want them to focus on growing and getting the correct amount of nutrition. Your feed that you get from the feed store is going to be perfectly balanced. It's going to give them everything that they possibly could need. And adding too many extras can throw off the balance. But if you do decide to give them treats, you should give them a little bit of grit on the side, because if they're on pine shavings, they're not going to have any like type of like dirt or anything to go into their gizzard and into the crop to help them break that food down. They don't need grit if you're just feeding chicken feed because it naturally breaks down with water. So, playing with chickens. They do like to play. They are easily entertained. They do not like new things. So if you're going to introduce anything to them, you're going to have to do it slowly, but like simple things that you can do around the house. Chickens love containers. I can't tell you how many times they get so excited over these stupid Tupperware containers I just bring outside and they have just like a little bit of chicken feed in it. It just needs to be a different shape, different size. Oh, they stick their head in it. They can like flip it over. They just love containers. It's their favorite thing in the world. Different containers for dust bathing. They love doing that. You know, you can make dust baths out of just about anything. I avoid diatomaceous earth because I have a fundamental like philosophy. People do argue with me on that. I don't feel it's good for their respiratory systems. But if that's something that you feel comfortable with, you're going to do what you're going to do. As far as your run, think about it. We built our runs for people, not chickens. So we have all this underutilized space. And so you should be going vertical, adding perches and things for them to jump on because they love that. It keeps them entertained. Like they just love jumping all over the place, flapping their wings just a little bit. Some chickens can fly pretty far, but like for the most part, they like taking those little short hops and stretching their wings a little bit and jumping around. It really mentally stimulates them. Treat dispensers. I have peck toys. I'm a huge fan of Omelet. It's a pet company. If you guys ever get a chance to check it out, they're very affordable. The treat dispensers they have, I can put in the dishwasher if they're dirty. So, and you can put in scratch, you can put in bugs, you can put in, I have little tiny kibble for them. All different things fit in there so that they're able to like peck at it, and it just keeps their mind busy because idle beaks are the devil's playthings. You're going to end up having all sorts of issues if your birds are bored. Fodder, very simple to grow. Just get some wheat berries from Amazon, put them in some water and they'll sprout. And they love doing peck pecks. I mean, like anything that they can put their beaks on and explore the world with. Because they have nerve endings in their beaks. They're eager to touch everything with their beak. It's like a kid with their hands. I've been changing my bedding around. I have sand. Sometimes I have shavings. Sometimes I had hemp bedding until Rex messed up. You know, there's all sorts of things that you can do to keep your chickens entertained. And, you know, right now my girls are locked up. Not everybody has that fundamental belief that my girls are locked up because of 5-in-1. So making sure that they have plenty of things to do. The cabbage pinatas, they love that. They love it more than anything. Anything they can shred, anything that they can peck at, pull, share, run around the coop with, and chase each other, they are down for it. And, unlimited greens is the way to go. I try to stay away from giving too much scratch and try to stay away from giving too many bugs because we don't want them to get fat and get fatty liver and like have health issues down the road. So yeah. And if you check out this poultry that they had in that other picture, this is a new product that's coming out this week. And it's not as tall as one of their other products. So this one's actually portable. And it has a little treat dispenser up at the top. It's got a little dish and they go up there and they enjoy jumping up there just to play with the treat. There's a little windmill that moves around that they're able to get onto and it spins and they enjoy that for some reason. It's a good time. So it's something that might be worth your time to invest in. If not, go vertical. You want to make sure that you are, utilizing all of your space to enrich your chickens and make them have the best life possible. Absolutely, we'll sign you up for one. Okay, handling and adding chicks. There was a question about that was presented. Biosecurity is your number one defense against disease. And the best way to talk about biosecurity is to start about hand washing. You should be using soap and water. You don't have to use anything fancy, scrub your hands for 30 seconds, sing the happy birthday song, use soap and water, really clean your hands, clean underneath your fingernails. Like when you're out there with your chickens, please don't touch your eyes. You will get pink eye. I've heard of people getting salmonella because they carry that naturally with them. You want to have Coop specific shoes. I have a cute little pair of Sloggers. They're the best Coop shoes I've ever bought in my life. I have Crocs, they're great too, but those shoes are only into the coop and out of the coop. They don't leave my yard. I don't wear any of the clothes that I would to save, like, because I go to Tractor Supply to get my feed. I don't wear any of that stuff in my backyard. The reason being is because you can bring home all sorts of diseases on your shoes, on your clothing, and you can spread that to your chickens. As much as you would like visitors, I wouldn't allow them. I know my neighbors loved coming over to like stare at our chickens and like they wanted to throw them treats and it's great. It's fabulous. It's a nice way to unite your community, but right now it's probably not a great idea. And like, you have to be really careful. You don't want them bringing something into your yard that's going to make them sick. The poultry swaps. I know that the last one at Sharpsburg just got canceled as far as selling poultry on the premises. But if you get a new bird or a group of birds, you need to quarantine them for at least 30 days. And you need to keep them at least 30 feet away from your flock. The farther away, the better. You should only be wearing a certain set of coop clothing for one flock and a totally different for your other flock, because you do not want to be combining any type of disease. You don't know if your flock has Merrick's, because Merrick's is a very leaky vaccine. You don't know if somebody has a respiratory illness that could take out your flock. You just don't want to open up that can of worms. You want to keep them as far away from possible and, make sure that the illnesses work themselves out, because if you get new chickens, you're bringing somebody else's problems to your flock. So it's something to be very aware of. If you have questions on that, the USDA website, Defend the Flock, has the best resources. They're simply written. They even have a kids page. Like if you're like sitting there going, oh, too long, didn't read, you can always go there and just check everything out. They've got some great videos. They have signs. Like it's really, really good. Integrating new members into your flock. The playpen method by the Chicken Chick that's what she calls it. It's probably the best thing I've seen. Chickens do not like new anything. And they definitely don't like new birds coming into their territory. The pecking order is real. There's a whole reason for it. It's for their safety and they have to work it out. But when you take these little like 8-week-old chicks and you're putting them up against fully grown hens, roosters, they're not going to have a good time. So the playpen method is probably the best way to do it. And yeah, it is really nerve-wracking to do because it's just going to stress you out. I've done it just with reintroducing my birds after like dealing with a sickness or broodiness. I've sectioned off a part of my run for them and I put them out there and they all can see each other, but they cannot touch. So that way that they can interact with each other. And once they stop doing that whole rushing at the, at the fence and like spiky pancake-ness, it'll be time to let them actually like not have the fence. But you want to make sure that you have a place where the littles can get away from the bigger flock. So, have a little escape route just in case. But you'll know when it's time because you can tell because they stop paying attention to each other. They're like, oh, okay, whatever. So that's probably the best way. And you can check that out on the Chicken Chicks website. And I really suggest doing this also for like if you have a broody that you had to break, or if like you had a chicken that was sick. So it's probably the best way to do that. And don't introduce a single bird to your flock. It never turns out well. They need to have friends with them. So yeah. Okay. This is like my big soapbox. And I am sorry if like it's like, oh my gosh, Ray, for real. Like avian flu, it's real. I've been talking about it since December, when the first outbreak happened in Nova Scotia. It's been spreading through the United States. It's been going through the migratory flight ways all through everything. And they think that basically it was introduced when all the birds were up north interacting with the different flyways of different continents. The mortality rate is 100%. They sit there and they say, oh, it's between 75 and 100%. No, it's 100%. Your birds will die within the first 48 hours of contracting this virus. There's no cure for it. There's no vaccine, and they don't survive. It is a horrible way to die. So how do they get it? It comes through feces, dander, and it has to have something to cling to. So if you're coming in from your yard and like you accidentally step in a little piece of bird poop, you might be bringing that virus into your run, into your girls. So you need to be really, really careful with it and really tighten up your biosecurity, making sure that you're scrubbing your shoes, making sure that, you're not introducing other birds. Make sure that birds can't get into your coop, into your run. Bird netting is going to be your friend. You want to cover everything up. Now, once the heat kind of takes place, we're hoping that we can ease up things. But they just had a case just the other day in Harford County. So it's here. It's been here for a while. It's in all the states around us. We just haven't had like a lot of birds test for it, but it is here. So you want to make sure that like your dogs aren't coming into your run because they can be carriers. They don't necessarily show the signs and symptoms. The probability of a person getting it is very low. Yes, there have been a couple cases, but it's so low. That's not even something I would worry about. If you are, washing your hands and making sure you're not touching your face or like licking your fingers or doing anything weird. I mean, like I kiss all my chickens, but like they're undercover, but I wouldn't be, doing that to somebody else's birds or cuddling with somebody else's. Like my neighbor, I love seeing her birds, but I have to see them from like across the street. So we want to make sure that we are, being very aware of that. So with flock down comes boredom. You want to make sure you have all of those enrichment ideas because you can have feather picking, egg eating, cannibalism. None of that is good. None of it is easy to break. And it is a manifestation of stress, and stress will affect the health of your birds. And make sure that you register your flock with the Maryland State Department of Agriculture to get notifications. They have a listserv you can ask to be put onto it because they will tell you what is going on in the state. And they're very timely in the information that they show and share with you. Yeah, people are really focused on people getting sick versus the chickens. I mean, like the amount of commercial birds that have been killed since this has come into the news has been in the billions. Like it's insane how much money they have spent in just destroying birds, and it's affecting a lot of things, and they're focused on the wrong thing. And there is no vaccine. So just be aware of that. There is no vaccine. So there's no way to really stop it other than just through biosecurity and keeping wild birds out of your yard. Okay, good. Pennsylvania has a registration. I think Virginia does too. I'm not really sure though. So some more not so fun stuff. Common issues with chicks. I talked a little bit about coccidiosis. You're going to want to treat that with Corid. Cord has no egg withdrawal. So if you're seeing like bloody stools, that they're like kind of like really lethargic, like I would just immediately treat for coccidiosis. It's a pretty powerful virus and it affects them really quick because they're very small. Um, the things that you need to know about treating with Corid, you can only have one water source. It has to be treated with Corid. It should be for at least 5 days. Don't mix it with vitamins because Corid is going to stop the absorption of vitamin B, which is what the coccidiosis virus enjoys munching on, so to speak. So you want to make sure that it's not mixed with anything because you're just not doing anything. Be aware that it could stunt the growth of your chicks and it's going to take them a while to get over it because they're teeny tiny, they're little babies, and that's a big virus for them to go and fight against. Splay leg or spraddle leg, you're going to create little hobbles for them. You can also put them in a cup. It's to help them be able to strengthen the tendons and the muscles in their legs and make sure that they are where they're supposed to be. If you leave it too long, they actually will have like their legs grow in weird directions. And it's one of those situations where sometimes it's better to cull them than to keep them going. With curled toes, you can make little shoes for them and they can handle a lot with that. There's a lot of different blogs out there that have really good information on that. And I don't usually send people to blogs, but they have a lot of really good pictures with some practical and inexpensive ways to handle that. But if you end up with like a chick with splay leg, stick it in a cup. That way it can just like have its little head out and it's just focused on like pushing down. So that way it's strengthening those muscles. They can have a slip tendon. It sometimes presents as splay leg. And if that's the case, you can feel the little tendon, you just pop it right back in. Rai neck, crazy chick syndrome, stargazing, they're all related. They are all a vitamin deficiency. So to do that, it's a simple fix. To go and treat it, you're just going to go and pick up its poly V sol with no iron. It's probably the best way to do it. You just give them a little drop once a day and you'll start to see a difference. So if you don't know what Rai neck is, their little necks kind of tilt all the way back and it becomes stargazing because their eyes are just pointed straight to the sky. It is a vitamin deficiency that's affecting the muscles and the nerves in their neck. Crazy chick syndrome, you will see them spinning. And that again is also a vitamin deficiency. Sometimes it is a neurological issue, but for the most part, from what I've seen from friends that have had that type of experience and from what I've researched, it has to do with vitamin deficiencies. You might see a crossbeak. There are Facebook groups that talk about that, but you really, when dealing with a crossbeak, you need to consider the quality of life. And that's a hard conversation to have, but you might have to have it. And last but not least, failure to thrive. 3 out of my 6 chicks. Crazy chick syndrome can be fixed. If it's a vitamin deficiency, it can. So you're just going to want to give it, I would recommend Nutri-Drench because that's probably the most complete. Just stick a couple little drops in their mouth a couple times a day and it will help them. But it is a vitamin deficiency. Once you start to see them slow down from spinning around like crazy, like that's how you know that it's working. But if it's a neurological issue, you're not going to see it slow down at all. Like you'll see them getting worse. Failure to thrive. 3 out of my 6 chicks looked like they were 2 weeks old when everybody else they were all 4 weeks. And there's a huge difference developmentally from that. So my Camilla, as you can see in the picture there, she's a tiny, tiny production hen. She's little, like she's 3 pounds. She should be almost 5. She's very petite. She's very compact. She did not grow at the same rate that everybody else did. I ended up having to give her some extra vitamins, making sure that she was getting to the feeder, that she wasn't fighting with people for food. And she had to stay on the heat just a little bit longer than the rest of them. Not all failure to thrives live. So it is something that you have to be aware of. Sometimes there's just something really wrong with them and they don't. I was lucky. So that's kind of like a crapshoot as to what's going to happen if you can save them or not for failure to thrive. So yeah, that was depressing. So some staples of first aid kits. I get asked this all the time. I used to train racehorses, and so like having a first aid kit, like my first aid kit is ridiculous, and you don't have to have one as crazy as mine, but these are things that are pretty much like what you're going to use almost every time. Anytime you have an issue, multiple issues can be fixed with what I have up here for you. So Epsom salts, you just want to have them. It's going to help with any type of contractions, prolapses. Sometimes it just makes them poop because sometimes they get stopped up. So you're going to want to have those on hand. It helps with any type of inflammation. If they're stressed, if they've been through a hawk attack, just soaking in the warm water and having the Epsom salts there is going to help them. You want pain-free antibiotic ointment. The reason why you want the pain-free type is because the lidocaine and like whatever else they use to like stop the pain, it's too much for the size of your chicken. So like if you think of like, you know, a child that's like 40 pounds and your chicken's 4 pounds, they can't handle the dosage. So you want the pain-free kind. And I just don't want anybody to poison their chickens. So just be aware of that. There are several different kinds. You want the pain-free. It doesn't matter if it's Neosporin. It could be the dollar store brand. It does not matter. It's whatever you can afford. Electrolytes, probiotics, you should always have them on hand. We call it chicken hooch in my house. We have a little jug ready to go. Nutri-Drench, I swear by it. I really do. Gauze, you're going to need it. You can get the sterile kind, or you can get the kind that just comes in like a big, gigantic like block of them. I use chlorhexidine to clean my chicken's wounds. So the reason why is it's sterile, but it's not going to kill any tissue growth, like because certain things will kill it. You want to stay away from iodine. I don't advocate for betadine either because it does kill new tissue growth if you have like an injury where that's going to be important. Corid for coccidiosis. Vet wrap. Don't buy what's called vet wrap from a feed store. It's literally the sports tape and it's self-sticking bandage. So you can always do that. I'll get to panty liners in a second. You want to have a nice pair of tweezers because you never know what you're going to have to pick out of your chickens. You're going to get up close and personal. I didn't include gloves. I know more about my chickens than I really have ever wanted to know, but make sure you have gloves also. Panty liners. The reason why I recommend panty liners is because they're self-sticking. And so like you can wrap them around themselves and they're absorbent. And they're thin enough that like if you have like a bumble, you can wrap it around there, or a wound, and then wrap it with the vet tape. So that way it's cheap, you know, and it's something that you would have around your house. Monostat for vent gleat, because the husband will not pick it up on the way home. Yeah, you might want that. You know, there's all sorts of things that you can pick up along the way. I subscribe to Henny and Rue. It's a subscription box and they send me chicken stuff like once a month. They've sent me the hen healer, which I highly recommend because it's just really nice. And you know, you don't have to worry about that. I use microcyan. You can also use Vetterson. It's just this stuff is cheaper and it's the same thing. Also with Vetterson, you can use the horse, the dog, any of it, whatever's cheaper. Just because it has a certain animal on it, they change the price. So be aware of that because like they do that, especially if it's got horse stuff on it, it's usually more expensive. One thing that people, I've been experimenting with this because I have a chicken that gets bumblefoot a lot, but these types of bandages, basically it allows them to breathe and it keeps everything out. You know, I highly recommend it. Like once like you're dealing with that staph infection, you know, get a little bit out, get what you can after soaking the foot, and then put this on because it'll keep all the dirt out, but it'll allow it to breathe. And it actually does pull out the infection that's going on in there. So I highly recommend them. And it's the hydrocolloid toe bandages. And I just get the Walmart brand. I just get whatever's cheap. So there's all sorts of things that you can do inside of your first aid kit that doesn't have to be super duper expensive. So yeah. And these are my favorite resources that I like, that I honestly, I swear by, I really do. There are magazines for chickens. I love chickens magazines. My friend Marissa King writes all sorts of articles for them. It's scientifically based. It does have a little bit of like the generational knowledge, but there's the science to back it up. And I'm one of those people, like if you sit there on one of these groups and you ask, hey, what's wrong with my chicken? And they'll list everything under the sun and then tell you that you can heal your chicken with the power of garlic in Italy. That's not how this works. So like your chicken probably needs antibiotics or needs a vet. So like generational advice isn't going to help you there. But that's what I really like about Chickens Magazine. It does have the generational advice, but it has the science to back it up. Backyard Poultry Magazine is a fabulous magazine. They have an Instagram page too. If you want to follow them, they have advice on there. They just did a wonderful article on avian influenza and different ways to prevent that from coming into your yard. I wish that they would have this book given to anybody who buys chickens. This is the Chicken Health Handbook by Gail Damerow. And here's what's wonderful about it. It's a science textbook that doesn't read like a science textbook, and it's written in plain language. So everything in here is informative, it's science-based. There are all sorts of like, if you have a symptom, you can look up the symptom and it will give you what it could be and then how to cure it and things that you need to have on hand. But this is an absolutely fabulous book. To go with that, if you are online, Poultry DVM has a wonderful poultry symptom checker where you can be like, oh, well, their crop is squishy and like they have watery stool. Like it'll take you down the line of what it could be and then tell you what it is. It also will have a list of veterinarians that are current and up to date for your area. Now, I'm one of these people, I like reading scientific things, even though I'm a music teacher. The Merck Poultry Manual is another fabulous website. It is absolutely a veterinarian's manual. So if you go to read it, you might need a dictionary just to check things. And like, I mean, they talk in metric. So you might have to like do a little bit of conversion. And then my favorite podcast, because she also does community meetings too, like what the Backyard Chicken Caucus is doing. For Wilma the Wonder Hen, she does community meetings where we get together and we talk about all sorts of topics. Sometimes we just get together and it's just a Q&A and we all hop on there and we help each other. It is a wonderful community. I highly recommend her. I highly recommend her podcast, her blog. She's fabulous. And she has done a great job of uniting a bunch of people together. And it's nice to be able to hang out with like-minded people who aren't judgmental and they just want to answer questions because they love their chickens. So if you get a chance, I highly recommend that. And I think that's everything for me. So I am ready for some Q&A if you guys have questions. And hopefully I didn't move too fast. It's a lot to cover in an hour.
You did perfect. Thank you so much. So I guess just to kind of start with the Q&A. So what is it that got you into chickens? And as a follow-up question to that as well, what's something that you didn't know about chickens that you know now having had chickens? Right, what's one thing you didn't know?
So I started backwards. Most people like, get the chickens and then do the homestead thing. I had racehorses and I downsized from that and moved out here. And I've just always wanted them. They just looked fun. They just look like a good time. And I was like, oh, I really want chickens. Like the moment I met my husband, I was like telling him, I was like, yeah, I want chickens one day. And he was like, you're not getting chickens. We have chickens now. But I think the most amazing thing about chickens that I've learned is everybody loves the fact that you have chickens. Everyone. The minute people find out you have chickens, it's like some magical thing. And so like, it's really like a nice way to bring people together. People enjoy talking to each other about chickens. People are always asking me a million questions and I have zero problems talking about chickens because it's a lot of fun.
I absolutely agree. It's definitely a great conversation starter and they asked me the same thing. I was like, oh, you have chickens, and off to the races we go. Mm-hmm. For sure. All right, let's give everyone another second to see if we have any questions. I know we've had some questions along the way, so I think that's been helpful as well.
Let's see. I'm
All
trying
right.
to.
Yep, sorry.
I do have a pamphlet that I just wrote up, and it's got a lot of helpful like pictures, and I will share that with you if you want to just send that out. So, because a lot of people have said it's been helpful. So
Absolutely. Yep. So this webinar is being recorded, and we will send the recap as well as any pamphlets that you're willing to share as well to everyone on this call, and anyone who is watching after that would like to get them as well. You can send any requests to info@backyardchickencaucus.com, and we'll be happy to share that information with you. So again, thank you so much, Rai, for joining us today and for giving us an awesome presentation. And so here is both of our information here. Oh, it actually looks like we do have, we have some thank yous.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for coming. Thank you so much.
But yeah, so here's all of our information, and certainly happy to follow up with questions as well afterwards as well.
Yeah, and feel free to, if you have a question, feel free to message me. I'm mostly active on Instagram, but like I can find wherever you send a question, but like that's a fabulous community too. There's a lot of good things going on over there, and it's peaceful. And so like you don't have to worry about like politics, arguing, any of that. We don't put up with it. So if that's something you're interested in, come and join us, because it's a lot of fun.
It's all about chicken education. All right. Thank you, everyone.